from Guitarist.
And I'm Neville from Guitar Techniques and Guitarist.
And we're here to talk about the 2013 Gibson Custom Les Paul Standard 1959 reissue. It's such a long name I had to write it down.
And which is why from now on it will be referred to as the R9.
Okay, so the guitar is reviewed in issue 373 of Guitarist, and here we have two examples. This is a completely standard one supplied by the nice people at Anderton's in Guildford. You can go and buy it there if you want.
And this one I bought from World Guitars in Stonehouse. In fact, I swapped a couple of quite nice Gibsons for it. And this is stock other than the fact that I've had new pickups fitted to it.
Yeah, we'll come on to talk about the difference between those pickups in due course.
Well, I got this one because I really like this kind of T-burst look, the kind of faded cherry that it looks like the guitars I liked when I was a kid, and I always tend to gravitate to this look.
This one, as you can see, is slightly darker, a bit more cherry around the edges. The good thing is, depending on where you buy them, they'll probably have quite a good selection, and you can go for a more figured top, so like the traditional 59 type Tiger Stripe maple, or a slightly plainer one like this, slightly darker sunbursts, slightly lighter sunbursts. Everyone prefers a different thing.
They've done a few things actually differently now. For a while recently, the fingerboards have been two-piece rosewood. That's two-piece that way, not two-piece that way. It's not a very satisfactory thing on a guitar of this kind of quality, to be honest. And now they're solid, which is brilliant. They're using an aniline dye now, which is more like the old dyes that they used to do. What else, Mick?
Well, the aniline dyes is significant. It really affects the look of the guitar. They have this kind of more reddish tinge, especially to the back. And interestingly, the finish bleeds into the binding, so the binding goes a little bit pink, which is apparently a good thing for a historic reissue guitar.
I've had mine a couple of months now, and I've played it quite a lot. And you might be able to see that the binding's already going a bit pink there where my hands have gone up and down it. And it probably will do it around here as well. But it's quite cool, really. I like it. They've also using animal glue now to glue the tenon joint of the neck in place, which apparently is a more transparent sound, allows the response to come through the whole guitar rather than being blocked off. The binding apparently is closer colour as well to the originals, and the pickup surrounds. And I think, I might be wrong, but the pickup surrounds I think are taller, so the pickups sit more flush with them. Some of them, the actual metal part sits a bit proud and doesn't quite look right. So I like the look of this. Pickups more or less flush with the surrounds.
It's basically in line with a bunch of tiny tweaks that Gibson does every few years to make this guitar as close as possible to that fabled 59 burst. Okay, so we're going to play both guitars, just A-B them a little bit, just to explain what's going on here. Both guitars are plugged in directly to this Marshall 1974 X Blues Breaker. The volume is set on about 4. The tone is almost on 6. Guitars are straight in, no messing about, no pedals, no anything. We'll do that later.
Okay, here's my bridge pickup. This is tone flat out and volume flat out.
Okay, I'll just do something similar. Tone and volume flat out, bridge pickup.
Here's my neck pickup. I'll do the same thing. Tone control and volume control both flat out.
Okay, and on this one, there we go.
I'll go to the traditional middle setting. This is everything flat out, so both tones, both volumes.
Okay, and on this guitar, same kind of thing. Everything flat out, middle setting.
It's nice, that kind of quacky, slightly country sound that you get in that middle position. This is the other great sound I like, is where you keep everything flat out except the bass pickups volume control, which I've knocked down here to about 9. In fact, if you hear it, you can hear it. You hear it change when you do that. So this gives all of the treble pickup, the bridge pickup, and almost all of the bass pickup as well, the neck pickup. So nice, kind of crunchy, slightly fatter sound, but not all of one or all of the other.
Okay, we'll do that on the same. So it's the middle setting, neck pickup volume down just a touch. Let's cue you in. One of the key things that I think is interesting is how responsive these tone controls are, because a lot of those mid-90s Les Pauls were very mid-heavy, they were very thick sounding. Listen to this. So here we are, bridge pickup, everything on full. Just going to roll the volume pot down ever so slightly. On a Strat, this would give you a radical drop in volume. I find that really useful when I'm playing really loud, because if you've got lots and lots of gain on, you just go back to there and the thing cleans up. Not a lot of Les Pauls actually do that.
No, that's a really lovely thing. But a lot of people also, in this middle position, if you take the tones down, both of the tones down, you get a much more funky kind of sound. You know, it just... But it really cleans up, and it allows you to do all those kind of slightly more rhythmical things that a Les Paul isn't traditionally thought of being good at. But another great thing about Les Paul, Gibsons in general, was the old thing where you used to set your neck pickup for rhythm at maybe 6 or 7, set your bridge pickup flat out, so you'd be playing rhythm sort of on your neck pick. Comes your solo. So you could literally use it like that, use it as a lead and rhythm instrument. In fact, it says rhythm and treble on there for that very reason.
One of the things people talk about first with 1959 Les Paul's originals and reissues is the neck profile. There's a lot written about how chunky they were, and certainly some of them were, but they weren't necessarily all that way. Neville has played Les Pauls all his life. We both played our share of bursts. In addition to that, Nev worked as a guitar repairer for Gibson. So, Nev, what's your impression of the new necks?
These necks are absolutely perfect. I can't really criticise them at all. They're a classic modern guitar neck. It's a lovely C, I suppose slightly fading into a V, although there's no actual straight V-ness to it. It's a lovely, there's a lovely thing down the centre there. Your hand just goes around it naturally. It feels great. Over the years, Gibson has changed the design of the neck so much, sometimes intentionally, sometimes just the guy happened to do it this way, or the machines were wearing out, or whatever, or nobody really knew what the intention was. But I mean, I remember Peter Green saying to me that his Les Paul, the one that Gary Moore subsequently bought, I think his word was a funny old chunky neck, and it was a big, the classic 58 shape. Some of those were, and that was a bigger neck. So maybe that was an early 59 that he had. But these are beautiful. They're both very similar as well, aren't they, Mick?
Yeah, they certainly feel similar in profile. I think the point of talking about it is that a lot of people just immediately assume they wouldn't like it because the neck's too big. I'd say go and try one, because they're nowhere near as big as you think they might be. We had Bernie Marsden's Beast in the mag just recently, and that came in. Neck-wise, that's got a big old neck on it. I've also played a couple of Joe Bonamassa's 59s, and they're both quite different. They also differ significantly in weight. So Bernie's Beast, for example, was what I would regard as a very heavy Les Paul.
Yeah, it is. This one, I think it's almost identical. If anything, that one might be a tad lighter. But these are relatively light Les Pauls, in my experience, having owned many 70s ones, which, they really were old clunkers. They'd weigh a ton.
So what, 8.5 pounds?
Probably. I haven't weighed it, but it feels right round your neck. I've got quite a thick strap here for added support, and this doesn't worry me at all. I've had times when I've had to stop using a Les Paul on a tour because it's just taking it out of my neck and my shoulders.
There's definitely a tonal influence as well. Obviously, everything else on the guitar makes a difference, right down to which pieces of wood they select. But I've done it where I've gone to buy guitars and been lucky enough to be able to play 6 or 7 of the same guitars, graded them by weight and listened to them. And I'm convinced that the heavier the guitar, the more kind of lower mid-range dominance you get, especially when the guitar's made of mahogany predominantly. And I think that bears out. Every R9 that I've played that's been light, I like, because I personally like that. And the heavier ones I tend to like less, but it's a purely personal opinion.
The other thing I've noticed over the years, and some people might agree with this, is that the heavier the guitar is, the less dynamics it has, the less it responds to turning the volume controls down, and it tends to be more kind of in your face most of the time. And some people love that, actually. Well, I've got one, so I presume I do think they're value for money. It's funny, Mick mentioned the guitar I bought in 96 or 7 when we first met. As I recall, that guitar, RRP at the time, was upwards of £3,500. Now, 17 years on, this is £4,500. That doesn't, to me, represent massive inflation. In fact, it seems that they seem to have had their house a bit more in order price-wise. And going back to the old days, in 1968, when I first was aware of Les Pauls, a 5-year-old one, or sorry, 7 or 8, 9-year-old one, was £350, £400, which was a year's salary. And this is way less than a year's salary.
Interesting you mentioned that last guitar. I actually hooked that review out and had a look at it the other day. It was actually £4,500. Apart from the guitar's vintage foibles, things like finish bleeding into the binding, you might not like the tuning pegs, you might prefer something else. Apart from its vintage specific aspects, there's nothing I'd really criticise. You can run your hand down the binding here a little bit on the neck and feel the ridge. Some people might find that unacceptable on a brand new modern guitar in terms of build quality. Personally, doesn't bother me at all. It just makes it feel more like an old guitar. The one criticism I have is the case. I think for £4,500, it's not the best case in the world. But the guitar itself, hard to fault.
It's interesting that, because when I bought one of my reissues some years ago, I remember it came with 2 cases. It came with the brown Lifton style one with the pink lining, which is a pretty flimsy case. It's not a great case to protect your guitar, but it came with the classic black Gibson thick plush line cases as well. And now it just comes with the classic old style one. One thing that I've criticised on these reissues, in fact all Gibsons for a few years, is the pickup shape, because they can't seem to get it right. All the people who make replacement pickups, most of them, they get it right. So I don't see why Gibson can't. The new ones, the edge radius is much rounder, much taller, and the corners are not quite right either. Funnily enough, they look better in mixed guitar there than they often do, because the pickups are sunk in and you don't see that big radius on the corners. But these pickups that I got from Tim Mills at Bare Knuckle, these are the correct shape, tooled after original 59s. It's interesting, I didn't intend to change them at all, but I was speaking to Tim Mills at Bare Knuckle, and we were talking about pickups, and I said that I just got this new reissue, this R9, and that the pickups are scatterwound in it, where they wind them like that rather than or like that. So he was interested in that, and Mick and I happened to be going down to see him. So I took the guitar down and I left it with him for a week or two to have a play with. He played it for many, many hours, and he loved the sound as well. And I actually said to him, "Look, Tim, I know you do nice proper shape covers. Could I get a set of covers off you to put on the pickups?" He said, "Yeah, absolutely, no problem." Then he said, "You know what? I'd really like to make you a set of pickups for that guitar and for you, because I know what you like. We've discussed it." So that's how this came about. This is why I've got different pickups. And they wasn't intentional because the Gibson pickups do sound great.
Just back and forward a little and just compare those neck pickups.
Okay. It's very hard to differentiate between the sounds, but I'll tell you one thing. I've used this guitar live 4 times now, twice with the Gibson pickups in it and twice with the bare knuckles in it, and it was totally different live. And that's when it comes out. It's when you've got your amp at your volume on stage, you know how you sound, and it's very different. It just reacted differently to how it did before.
In my experience, yes. Gibson's been refining this guitar for so long and learning more about its old guitars. And I would say palpably so, which isn't to say that those early R9s weren't as good or there weren't fantastic examples of them. But I think we've both been impressed by the changes that Gibson has made to these guitars and how they make you feel. That's the real difference.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I buy guitars as much for how they make me feel. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I bought this because I like the look of it. I was in World Guitars, I had a few of them, and they had a couple and they were very similar, and I bought them on looks. I did, of course, play it to make sure it wasn't a dodo, and it was brilliant as well. But they do make you feel great. You play better, you play more authentically if that's your bag, and yeah, I'd say it probably, I mean, I've had 5 of these now. And this probably is the best one I've ever had.
Okay, so we've got the Les Pauls plugged into the Marshall here. Now we've introduced some pedals. We've got a selection of well-known and well-loved pedals on the floor. There's a full-tone OCD, a Keeley modded TS-808 Ibanez Tube Screamer, a Klon Centaur, and a Free the Tone Final Booster. So Nev's just going to play through some sounds. We're just going to switch the pedals on and off so you can hear the effect of using different types of overdrive with this setup. So Nev, where's your start point for a Gibson Les Paul and Marshall sound?
Well, I always, all my life, I've always gone for a Les Paul through a Marshall sound, even if I'm playing a Telecaster through a Fender amp, because I always try to get that sound, because that's the sound I hear in my head as the ultimate guitar sound. Here on my OCD, I use the OCD to make any other amp sound like a Marshall. So I use that with my matchless to make it sound like a Marshall. So here is the sound of the OCD.
Let's just turn it off again so you can hear the sound of the amp. And I'll just turn the OCD on again.
You can hear that the sound is still essentially a Marshall sound. The OCD hasn't done anything tonally to the amp. It's just the amp, but kind of more of the amp. It's the way I think of it.
One of the things that a lot of people will do is use a straight booster, so no coloration in the distortion. Let's hear what that sounds like. Okay. Give us a lick, Nev. This is just a clean lick through Les Paul through the Marshall.
Okay.
And now just with some boost.
Yeah, pretty much the same, but just pushing the front end of the Marshall, I suppose, a bit more.
Yeah, and it has a massive difference depending on what amp you're using. We've got the Marshall down to about 2 now because we've been playing for a little while and the thing's really warmed up, so it's already having its own drive. But for my money, that kind of clean boost Les Paul Marshall, that's just doesn't get much better than that. let's try the fabled Klon Centaur then.
Okay.
So here's the Klon.
That's a great sound. I mean, the Klon always, to me, opens things up. It gives you loads of headroom, gives you loads of tonal range and everything. It's not like a centered tone like the OCD is and like so many others are. It's a very broad spectrum of sound.
So let's here's a bit of 808 Tube Screamer. And here's a bit of full tone OCD. And finally some Klon. And just to finish off, one of the sounds we both really liked earlier was the OCD and the boost. So here's the OCD. And with the boost.
Okay, Mick, same 3 pedals, you playing your guitar. What are your preferences here?
Well, Nev and I have been playing for a long time together, and he tends to go for the Marshall-y Gibson sound. I come from more of the Fender side of the fence, but it's a great indulgence to get one of these things going with loads of gain. So for me, here's the clean sound of the guitar. And I'm saying clean, it's not very clean because it's through the Marshall, but it's with no pedals. So I'm going to add a bit of 808 Tube Screamer, which is going to make it sound muddy and thick. And to that, add on the Klon on top, which is a super, super mid-rich kind of sound. It's almost into kind of Texas, everything over the top kind of territory, and I really like those sounds. And if you were to play on the neck pickup with that kind of sound, let's roll a bit of tone off the neck pickup. It's not woman tone as such, but it's certainly got that kind of really kind of nasal. Back in the real world, I think, like you, bridge pickup again, boost. Tuning slipping a bit there, but yeah, that's it for me.